Jennifer from Flux. In this video, I'm going to show you how to crochet the Mega Squish Throw. This is a really fun blanket to make. We're going to be using a very large crochet hook. You may have seen these at the craft store. And this is a new yarn from Red Heart called Irresistible. It's very, very thick and bulky, almost like rope, but it's also very soft and light and squishy. So this is a popular trend I've been seeing a lot where people are using very large hooks and very large yarns. So we're just going to make a very simple color block throw. And that you could totally make this in one evening. And if you're very, very fast, you could probably make this while watching a movie as well. So this blanket measures about 50 inches wide and about 50 inches tall. And I've used 3 different colors, and we're going to get to the supplies in just a moment. But I've done it in such a way that it creates kind of like a segmented color block effect. So let's get started. For this project, you'll need a tape measure that will help you get the correct sizing of your blanket. You'll also need a pair of scissors and your hook. I'm going to be using this gigantic hook. This is a 25 millimeter US 50 crochet hook. This is found at the craft store. I got this at the craft store, but there's also a lot of them online. And this is a nice wood one that I found. If you notice, there's no tapestry needle. We're going to be weaving in the ends with our fingers because this is such large yarn. And speaking of the yarn, I'm going to be using a yarn called Irresistible by Red Heart. Now, I just did a yarn 101 on this yarn. This is a really fun, kind of trendy yarn. You've seen a lot of super chunky projects out there. I'm going to be using 9 balls of the Irresistible. So 3 balls of the chartreuse, this pretty green here, 3 balls of silver, and 3 balls of aqua. Now you can use less if you want a little bit of a smaller blanket, or you can make a smaller project as well. So this is, let's see, 29 yards for each ball, just to give you an idea about that. So let's get started. Okay, to begin, we're going to put a slip knot on our hook. So take the yarn and wrap it around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in, and bring up a loop. And then we're ready to get started. Our blanket has a starting chain of 30. So what we're going to do is wrap the yarn around the hook and bring it through the loop. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 28, 29, and 30. Okay, so here is our starting chain, and as you can see, the chunky yarn just makes for a really fluffy blanket, and it'll grow really quickly as well. So what we're going to do now is begin row 1. So what we want to do is in the 3rd chain from the hook. This loop here on your hook does not count. So go 1, 2, 3, and that's where we're going to work our first stitch. This blanket, we're going to keep the stitches easy because of the size of the hook and the yarn. We don't want to get too intricate. A lot of the detail you'll lose. So keeping with the simple stitches will not only make it easier to work with, but you don't really need to get too fussy with large hooks and yarn like this. So what we want to do in the 3rd chain from the hook is work a double crochet. So wrap yarn around hook, insert the hook into the chain, wrap yarn around hook again, and bring up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the first 2 loops. Wrap yarn around hook, bring it through the last 2 loops. Okay, so that's the double crochet stitch, and you can see already it has grown in height quite a bit. So what we're going to do is just work double crochets in each chain all the way across our row. So I did experiment a little bit with single crochet stitches instead of the double crochet stitches, and I found that the fabric that I was getting was a little bit stiff and not as drapey as this. It's pretty thick, so you don't want the weave or the knots that you're creating with your stitches to be too tight. So the double crochet stitches kind of open it up a little bit. Okay, so we're just working double crochets all the way across. I'm going to continue working my double crochets in each chain across, and then we'll continue once we get towards the end of this row and move on to row 2. Now just a tip when you're working with this thicker, heavier yarn is to just go nice and slow. It's not a project, you know, you want to rush through, especially if this is your first time working with yarn like this. And just go nice and slow and try to keep things nice and loose as well. Okay, so just work your double crochets in each chain all the way across, and then we'll rejoin towards the end of the row and I'll show you how to move on to row 2. Okay, I'm just coming up to the end of row 1. I'm just going to put a double crochet in that very last chain of our row. Okay, so row 1 is complete, and as you can see, it's already pretty tall for just being one row complete. So to move on to row 2 is almost identical to row 1. What you're going to do is chain 3. 1, 2, 3, and then turn your work. Now, because it's very bulky, it's quite a bit to manipulate around. But it'll be totally worth it in the end because it's just so squishy and it's so pretty and textured. Okay, so for row 2, we did a chain 3 and turned our work. And then we're going to, now this hole at the bottom here, we're not going to work a double crochet into that, but that first stitch that you come to, because this chain 3 counts as one of our double crochets, so we're not going to work down into the bottom of this here. We're going to go to that first stitch. So what you want to do is work a double crochet in that first stitch. Just like that. And then we're going to work a double crochet into every single stitch across. Now if you're having trouble seeing the stitches, you can kind of pull it apart a little bit and you'll see those holes there. And if you look at the top view, there is a V at the top. Okay? So just work a double crochet into each stitch all the way across till you get to the end of the row. So I'm going to keep working, my row 2, and then once we get towards the end of the blanket, I'm going to show you how to finish it off. This yarn is so big around, you're not going to use a tapestry needle to weave in your ends. You're going to use your fingers. So I'll show you how to do that as well. Okay, so I'm just working a double crochet in each stitch. And then you're just going to be repeating row 2 over and over and over until your blanket is as tall as you'd like it to be, or until you run out of yarn, whatever comes first. And as you can see, we just have 2 rows, and already, let me just grab my tape measure. We have over 7 inches in height just from 2 rows, so that's really fun. You could make this blanket in an evening, no problem. So I'm going to keep repeating row 2, and then we'll rejoin, and I'm going to show you how to just finish your blanket off. Okay, so I've been working my blanket for a while, and I wanted to show you one more thing before we finish off the blanket. While you're working, let me just put this stitch in here so I can show you. While you're working your stitches, and you're finding you're getting to the end of your ball of yarn, or you're ready to join a new color. Now see, I've ran out of yarn in the middle of the row. So whether you're in the middle of the row or at the end of the row, it doesn't matter. You can join your yarn either way. And let me grab my new yarn. So I'm going to keep going with this aqua color. And what you can do is just tie the yarn right on. Now, if you have a way of joining yarn that you prefer, please feel free to do so. Definitely do what feels most comfortable and what you like doing best. But I like to just tie it right on. Now see these 2 ends? We'll worry about those later. I'm going to show you how to deal with those. But then what you can do is just keep, now I'm going to hold the old strand and we're going to kind of pass over this knot and move on to the new strand. Again, I'm in the middle of the row, so it's a little bit odd if you do that in the middle of the row. But with these large skeins of yarn, you'll waste a whole bunch of yarn if you try to back up to the beginning of the row. You'll have this long stretch of yarn that is a little bit too short to really make a new project with, but it's a little bit too long to just cut and throw away. So you can join in the middle of the row if you like as well. So then what we can do is just keep on moving. Now again, we're going to get the ends out of the way. And we're going to insert the hook into our stitch. And then again, get those ends out of the way and bring the new yarn through. And now we have our 3 loops on the hook. Then you can just work your stitch as you normally would. So you'll be left with these ends, which we'll weave in just a moment. but the front looks very nice, okay? And then you can keep moving right along with the rest of your stitches and the rest of the new ball of yarn, okay? So I'm going to keep working my stitches and then we'll rejoin towards the end of the blanket, and I'll show you how to deal with the ends and finish off your blanket. Okay, I'm just working the last double crochet into that last stitch. Just like that. And then I didn't mention this before, but you'll also want to work a double crochet into the top of the turning chain from the previous row. So apologies for leaving out that part, but you'll want to also work a double crochet in the topmost chain of your turning chain from the previous row, okay? So go ahead and work a double crochet in that turning chain to finish off the row. And then what you'll want to do to finish your blanket is to cut the yarn, and then you're going to wrap the yarn around the hook and just fasten that off, and our blanket is complete. Now, in the beginning of this video, I started with the aqua yarn, but my finished blanket, I made another blanket, and this one I started with the green at the bottom, then I moved on to this gray, this silver color, and then the aqua on top, so I kind of did it reverse. So you can do any color combination you like, and any order you like as well. So let's talk about these ends. Now you might have ends in the middle of the row like we had earlier, and you'll have some at the end of the row as well. So either way, what you're gonna do is, now if you have even like the largest tapestry needle, it's still a little bit too tiny for this yarn. So you'll just wanna use your fingers, and it's super easy, you just kind of feed it through. So just weave that end in, pull it through to get that knot down in there. Kind of let that knot nest in there a little bit. And then you're just gonna use your finger as you would a needle and just send the yarn through all these loops here and get those ends woven in. Okay, and go into your blanket until you feel it's sufficiently woven in. Okay, I'm gonna just do a couple more here. All right, and then what you can do is take your scissors and give it a nice tug. Now with this chunky yarn, once in a while you might have an end that wants to pop back out. You can just kind of tuck it back in. And then our blanket is finished, and it looks so squishy, and it feels squishy too. Let me just kind of straighten it out. It's super bulky and so much fun to make. And it would also make a wonderful play mat too for a toddler or a child to kind of sit on this big squishy surface and play. So that is the Mega Squish Throw. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click the subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.